Hello and welcome. A Ukrainian turncoat finds its end and the Russians advance further inside of Bakhmut. This and more in the situation report. Yesterday, Maxim Fomin, or known under his nom de guerre, Vladlen Tartarsky, as you can see here, he is here in the background, was killed in a bomb attack. He was born in Ukraine, spent time in prison since 2011 when he was arrested for bank robbery, from what I found. 2014, in the course of the war in eastern Ukraine, he was freed and then joined the rebels, joined fighting the Ukrainian armed forces. He fought on the front line as well as acted as a military blogger. He was one of the military bloggers that was actually referenced here in the past in the channel. I mentioned him in the past. He had over 500,000 followers on Telegram, and he was killed in a bomb attack, in an IED attack. He was a famous hardliner who said publicly on record, "We will defeat everyone, kill everyone, and rob everyone if we have to. It will be exactly as we want it to." He was in the past invited to events with Vladimir Putin, and he received a statue by a female viewer that you can see here. Here he is, receiving it and showing it to the public, and it seems like it's probably himself as a statue. He shows it here, and very few minutes later, that statue apparently blew up, killed him, and injured 25 others at that event. Daria Trepova was arrested for it. Was arrested for it. A woman who supposedly went to anti-war demonstrations at the beginning of the war. She, by now, at least the media says that she had admitted to it. There are some conflicting news as of now. We obviously are very early in the investigation, and we don't know how much the Russian government will report us the truth. But according to that report, she had met Tartarsky several times in the past. They knew each other, at least from afar. There's no claim that they have been friends, but they knew each other. And Gazeta.ru is saying that she might have been being used for transporting a statue. There are some reports that supposedly she received the statue with the to hand it over to him. We see the explosion here in the background as it was filmed, that she received the statue to hand it to him, and she was told that there was a listening device in it. In that regard, she would be kind of in the attack on Tartarsky without actually having planned to kill him in this event. Here we have a Ukrainian government official who's basically saying it's starting the infighting. The spiders that are put into a glass are starting to eat each other, and this is a sign of infighting. There's reports now that Daria Trepova was in contact with Navalny. The speakers, the persons who talk in his name or claim to talk in his name, say that actually it was the FSB. Tartarsky was criticizing the fighting, the war, how the Kremlin was conducting it, and also if Navalny is getting connected to this will allow the Kremlin to do maximum sentence for terrorism towards Navalny. We have here one of his last postings. We see it's from April the 1st, where he says that the army is doing big mistakes and there needs to be urgent changes to the legislations, that the soldiers who have failed, officers who have failed, have to go to Wagner penal colony companies, etc. You see that he was casting doubt towards the public. Generally, though, he was a hardliner, that we would expect him to be taken out because he was criticizing the government seems kind of inappropriate, because generally he was advocating for harsher measures. He wanted the war to conducted more brutally, more intense, etc. So he should, in theory, be somebody assisting the Kremlin with future harsh measures. Prigozhin was asked what what he thinks was responsible, and he's saying that yes, the event was in his cafe, by the way. So the event which blew up belongs to Prigozhin, and he doesn't think it was the Ukrainians. He thinks it's something else. Like with Daria, it's a group of radicals that is hardly related to the government. He doesn't specify that it's whether it's a Russian group of radicals or a Ukrainian ones, but he believes that the Ukrainian intelligence has not been responsible for this attack in this regard. Ukrainians are talking about infighting, about power struggles within Russia. And we see here, for instance, Riba, which is also mentioned quite a lot here, is doxing a military blogger named Moscow Calling with his full name, claiming he's responsible for he actually made a joke that Tartarsky and Dugina, the killed daughter of Alexander Dugin, are now together, or that she has been responsible for that. He's getting doxxed now, even after having deleted it. And as we can see, there are public calls for the prosecution of him. Other military bloggers even call for the execution. All of this show us how tense the situation now is among the military bloggers. It has to be understood that the military bloggers are a big part of the war. We have accounts with a reach of several millions. They are the hardliners that stir up the masses. They are the ones that influence public, that do their best to influence public to support a war that is increasingly unpopular within Russia. If one of them is getting killed in an attack like this, then basically all of them are under threat, which could be argued that this is an argument for a Ukrainian involvement, even though there is no proof whatsoever so far. There are some, as said, you will find some information around there. None of this is worth really quoting right now. But from a Ukrainian point of view, Tartarsky has been a traitor, a Ukrainian who switched to the Russian side. He has called for war crimes. He has called for even harsher measures of war against Ukraine. And if the Russian military bloggers are afraid for their life, then maybe their reach will diminish and maybe their public appearances will slow down. So in this regard, it could have some propaganda effect in this regard, as every military blogger in the Russian infosphere might have to think about what is to be expected next of him, how his life might be threatened from now on. North of the Seversky Donetsk, along the front line, we have continuous Russian attacks that are being reported. There are two around Crimea, obviously, the fighting is going on, and there are reports west of Chervono-Popivka and in the direction of Makivka. So more or less the fighting seems to concentrate further down now on the Crimea-Liman axis, but I cannot confirm any Russian successes here. There are also attacks against Bilohorivka and against Verkhnyo-Kamyanske, and we have the speaker for the Eastern Command of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Colonel Serhiy Cherevati, who said that the attacks in Bakhmut are still decreasing, so there are fewer and fewer attacks, but at the same time that doesn't mean that they don't achieve any success. The Russians are regrouping, according to Cherevati, but we have now image proof that they have actually taken the administrative building of Bakhmut. There were videos of Wagner troops raising it here, and it has been geolocated inside the center of Bakhmut. So while the map might still show us this here, the actual front line is more or less close to the road crossing here. In the last situation report, we talked about this place being taken. Now the front line is probably very close or has already reached the road here. In regards to the fact that the Russians are also advancing from the north, from the Azov industrial complex, it seems likely that the Ukrainians will have withdrawn by now somewhat further west, probably along a line like this here, as otherwise they would risk encirclement of any troops being here. Regardless of the reports by the Ukrainian sides that the attacks are decreasing, these successes have been noticeable over the last few days. There is no sugarcoating this. Further south around Avdiivka, the Russian attacks are also continuing. We have the usual long list of attacks. Novobakhmutivka in the direction of Novokalinove. We have attacks around Krasnohorivka in the direction of Stepove and attacks at Vesele. At Kamyanka, the Russians seem to have made some small successes. At least they claim this. There are also attacks at Novobakhmutivka, Stepove. No, I have this already. And we have attacks in the direction of Siverne into Avdiivka itself, Pervomaiske and Nevelske. Russians are claiming they have gained some ground in Pervomaiske and Nevelske. I cannot fully confirm this yet, but we actually have a Ukrainian success here. There's a video of Ukrainian soldiers fighting. I cannot show it to you because of the, the gore. And it's here, it's geolocated here, and which means the Ukrainians are more or less in this position. So they still do counterattacks. They still advance. They now and then they manage to push the Russians back. But here also, as well as in Bakhmut, the Russians are slowly but steadily advancing, even though slowly but steadily around Avdiivka has to be put into some perspective that this is under attack for almost 14 months by now, and still a small part of the front line that existed prior to the 24th of February 2022 is still under Ukrainian control. Further south, we have reports around Marinka. Here, the Russians claim they reached the administrative center as well. I cannot confirm this. There, I have not seen a video yet, but Russian attacks there are steady in this area. There's even criticism that the Russians attack too much and waste resources for inside of the Russian military blogosphere, that the Russians waste resources too much in Marinka. So some advances there are well within the realm of possibility. Around Vuhledar, I have no real new reports coming here, and along other than that, the southern area of the front seems to be more or less quiet. We have shelling, obviously, along the whole front line, and we have new images here of fortifications. This is actually from the airport of Berdyansk. So you can see how the Russians set up earthworks, how they set up dragon teeth, even far deep in the Russian controlled territory, like this here. This should be the airport. Yes, exactly. So even here, you have heavy fortifications happening as the Russians are preparing for Ukrainian counteroffensives and are taking them at least serious enough to prepare some preliminary defensive positions. When it comes to the mobilization, we have a report from the British Ministry of Defense, according to which, or fourth generation, the British Ministry of Defense is saying a quite relevant part of the Russian casualties is happening out of fighting, out of combat, due to excessive use of alcohol and due to lax discipline with weaponry, a sign of, obviously, of the mobilized personnel lacking discipline and control, which allows them to go into binge drinking and not having retrained properly. So apparently, according to the British Ministry of Defense, a lot of the casualties are being caused by this. We have a report from the Financial Times, according to which the Russians are confiscating passports of senior officials and of managers of state institutions, factories, etc. They say to stop defections. It's what the Financial Times reports here. We've seen it in the past, and I'm pretty sure I've reported it in the past on this channel too, as news like this were already coming last summer. So nothing particularly new here, except that apparently the confiscations are happening again. Obviously, it can be interpreted in different ways, that either the Russian government is afraid of senior officials fleeing and switching sides in some ways, but it also might indicate that Russia is on such a war footing now that they feel afraid for their personnel if it goes abroad, that they might be interrogated, kidnapped or whatever, and thus military relevant information might get into the hands of their enemies. Regardless of it, we, as the Financial Times are saying, that it's some kind of return towards Soviet times where personnel was not allowed to leave the country except for under certain high personnel was not allowed to leave the country except in specific exceptions. International support is also still coming to Ukraine. Spain has now said they fully repaired, and the 6 Leopard 2A4 they are donating to Ukraine. They are being sent to Poland right now to be handed over there to the Ukrainians. So they should be in Ukraine within the next maybe 1 to 2 weeks. Rheinmetall is reportedly building a repair center in Romania. It's already expected to be operational in April, and it will be used to repair Leopard 2s, Panzerhaubitze 2000 and other military equipment that was delivered from Germany or that is of German origin that will be repaired in this repair center in Romania. Poland also has already handed over the first MiG-29, so Ukraine has now finally definitely received some new fighter jets in this regard that to help them keep up their air defense. We also have a picture here that according to this, the Ukrainian government, or probably it says here Mayak, has started to produce bombs that are being dropped from drones. We've seen so far that hand grenades have been dropped, that mortar shells have been dropped, or small fragmentation grenades from grenade launchers, things like that, often added 3D printed fins. So everything was improvised. It was more or less just a question of time until the production of bombs is getting professionalized. Obviously, this is important. We see the fins here. They are important to stabilize the bomb while it's dropping down to allow for higher accuracy and thus higher effect. We have an interesting video here showing that the Ukrainians are actually more or less returning to the times of air defense spotlights and machine guns. What we see here is an exercise by the Ukrainians which is kind of reminiscent to World War II, where they have big spotlights to light up a target to then shoot it with air defense weapons. This is supposedly going to be used against Russian drones like the Shahed 131 and 136 by the Ukrainian side. And finally, we have an interesting picture here. Those are KS-19 100mm guns that are now being used by the Ukrainian side. We see them here in operation. The guns have been developed barely after World War II, where they are usually classified as a flak AAA, but they were designed from the get-go to be more of a multi-role artillery piece. So while they are capable for anti-air duty, at the same time they were designed to be also usable in an anti-tank role or in an anti-artillery role. So basically this is an anti-air gun, an anti-tank gun and an artillery piece in one. Obviously obsolete at that point. The ammunition that has been identified is also decades old, but the Ukrainians are using whatever they can, and they are now using more or less obsolete artillery pieces in this regard to shell Russian positions. That's it already from me for now. Today a little shorter in the situation report because along the front line there's not that much activity, and Tartarsky's assassination, execution, however you want to call it, it's probably a political debate too, what name you would use for that, what term you would use for that, but it has been the biggest event of the last 2 days, with some implication towards the Russian public and especially towards the military bloggers. As said, this is it already from me for now. If you enjoy this content, please hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment for the algorithm. If you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. And this channel is only possible because of the support from viewers like you. So if you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much to everybody already supporting the channel. That's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.